Donald Trump thought Canada would fold. He said it out loud. They can't make it without us. He stood at the head of the cabinet table in Washington, newly re-elected and swaggering with confidence, and mocked Canada's so-called dependence on the United States. But in Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney even reacting publicly. Because behind the scenes, he was executing a plan. One built not on bravado, but patience, precision, and leverage. Trump had launched a global trade war. The EU, Japan, China, now once again Canada. And the warning shots were loud. A 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. Threats against copper, pharmaceuticals, cars, even power exports. But while the U.S. president barked from the podium, Carney was playing chess. And in the end, it was Canada, not the U.S., that quietly came out ahead. The showdown, it began with a familiar Trump tactic, shock and pressure. From aluminum and steel to copper and autos, Trump rolled out tariffs across critical sectors. Loudly, we're going to be announcing pharmaceuticals, chips, and copper today. We did steel and aluminum to 50%. And cars. Now today, we're doing copper, he declared. On the surface, it looked like Canada was about to get crushed. But Carney knew something Trump didn't think anyone had noticed. The pattern Trump's trade style had a rhythm. He would make sweeping, aggressive announcements to 50% here, 35% there, only to quietly carve out exemptions later. That's what happened with copper. While headlines screamed about a 50% tariff, Canada's cathode exports and raw copper ores were quietly left untouched. Carney understood the show. He knew this wasn't just about Canada. It was about global optics. Trump needed headlines. Carney needed results. The leverage sell. While Trump escalated, Carney struck back, quietly but firmly. Canada warned that it could suspend critical electricity exports to the U.S., energy that powers American homes and factories. It wasn't a public threat, but it was a shot across the bow. Then came the masterstroke. Carney didn't panic. He slowed the talks, pushed for exemptions under the Canada-US-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA, and refused to give in to artificial deadlines. Our objective is not to reach a deal at any cost, Carney told reporters from Prince Edward Island. We're not here to validate political theater. The trade trap in the theater was global. Trump was dealing with everyone at once, not just Canada. His new deal with the EU, finalized around the same time, hit Europe with flat 15% tariffs. And no carve-outs. No relief on steel. No exemptions on pharmaceuticals. It was a blunt instrument. But Canada? Canada got a tailored deal. Carney and his team, led by Kirsten Hillman and Dominic LeBlanc, preserved critical CUSMA exemptions. They allowed some pain in politically symbolic sectors like autos and steel, but they saved the rest. The real win, the final terms told the story. Steel and aluminum stayed at 50%, but both sides agreed to revisit them soon. Copper tariffs were narrowed. Canada's most valuable copper exports spared. CUSMA protections still intact across most manufactured goods. Dan Kelly of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business was blunt. Not the deal we would design, but a deal we can live with. In other words, survival with strategy. Dodging disaster. According to Drew Fagan from the University of Toronto's Monk School, the average U.S. tariff on Canadian goods now sits at 2%, 10 times higher than last year. Yes, but nowhere near the 15% across the board nightmare that was on the table. And Canadian businesses noticed. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce called the 50% tariffs egregious, but praised Carney for keeping the architecture of trade intact. It wasn't about winning every battle. It was about winning the war. Small business. Real impact for small businesses. The relief was real. A CFIB survey showed nearly 70% of firms importing from the U.S. had swallowed the cost of Canada's retaliatory tariffs, a median loss of $9,000 since March. But they avoided something far worse: massive disruptions, closed supply chains, lost jobs. Carney's tradecraft had worked. He didn't trade headlines for substance. He traded short-term losses in specific sectors to protect long-term continuity, the long game, and that was the key. This wasn't about July. It was about the next CUSMA review. Next year, when the real structure of North American trade could be rewritten. Catherine Fortin Lafebre of the Chamber of Commerce summed it up. These handshake deals matter. But Canada's in a different position. We have a functioning agreement. Now we need to shape the most favorable outcome for what comes next. In the end, Trump got what he wanted: a press conference and a headline. He claimed victory. He framed the outcome as strength, but Carney walked away with something much more valuable: trade continuity, economic stability, global respect. He didn't just survive the Trump tariff onslaught. He redefined what Canadian trade strategy looks like in an era of global uncertainty. So now the question is, when the next tariff storm comes, will Canada be ready again, or has Mark Carney already written the playbook the world will follow?